Euromaxx highlights. Coming up on the show. Top attraction. Inflatable puppets wow the crowds in France. Paper cuts. Danish artist Peter Callesen and his fragile creations. Green fingers. How urban dwellers get back to the roots. Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Louise Houghton.
Hello and welcome to the Highlight Show. We begin with a look at the art of unicycling, which is usually only associated with the circus. Nowadays, though, the unicycle is seen as an international sport with championships in different disciplines like uphill, sprint, cross-country and even slow reversing. In 2010, at just 17, Germany's Sebastian Niedner won the slow reversing world record, and this year he hopes to add downhill, amongst others, to his already long list of achievements.
The unicycle. One man, one mountain. The Blomberg Mountain south of Munich is more than 1,000 metres high. The ground is soft after heavy rains and the routes are slippery. Perfect conditions, says unicyclist Sebastian Niedner.
It actually makes it more fun when it's wet and when it's much more difficult and scary.
Sebastian Niedner is Germany's best unicyclist. The 17-year-old from Munich turned professional at age 11. He's won world championships and set world records in his sport.
A good unicyclist is somebody who always does what's tough. If you fall down, you've got to get up again, carry on and never give up. You've also got to be ambitious. That's always part of it. You must always persevere, and if you don't succeed at first, you must always try again until you do. Of course, you've also got to be very fit.
Straight to his favourite discipline, the downhill. That involves cycling down the mountain as quickly as possible. The foothills of the Alps are a popular destination for walkers and mountain bikers.
I think it's a lot more dangerous when he's on his bicycle. But on the unicycle, I know he's very fit and in control. He picks up the occasional scratch and maybe gets covered in mud and dirt, but nothing bad happens to him.
Unicycling used to be the preserve of young children and clowns. Today, it's a real sport. People come from all over the world to compete in tournaments like the Salzkammergut Trophy in Austria. The sport is becoming increasingly popular.
You can see it already. There are more and more people turning professional, and they're getting younger and better. When I was their age, I wasn't riding as well as they do. So a lot of positive things are happening.
Sebastian Niedner needs to train every day. The unicycle is no longer just a toy for him. By pushing himself to the limit, he has won a string of medals, some in quite curious disciplines. Sebastian Niedner is a two-time world champion in slow reversing. He travels 10 metres in 1 minute and 12 seconds. A unicycle can cost between 150 and 500 euros, depending on the discipline. Niedner takes 7 with him to a world championship. Sebastian Niedner also teaches courses for beginners, and he's captain of a Munich unicycle club.
Before, there were people that I idolized and that I was daunted by, and now I've become that person. And I think that's a very good development.
The 17-year-old's next goal is to win more titles at next year's World Championships in Italy.
And we wish him the best of luck with that, of course. We're off to Austria now, though, where we meet up with Russian soprano Julia Novikova at the Salzburg Festival. Since launching her stage career in 2006, she's won numerous prizes, including the prestigious World Opera Competition. When you hear how she reaches these impossibly high notes, it's easy to understand why.
soprano Julia Novikova's first performance at the Salzburg Festival. The Russian singer is playing the title role in Igor Stravinsky's opera The Nightingale. Her debut is an important step in the career of the 28-year-old singer from St. Petersburg. Julia Novikova started singing as a child. She entered the world-famous St. Petersburg Conservatory when she was 18. Soon, she was performing at prestigious opera houses in Paris, Vienna, Berlin, and New York. But despite her experience, she is still nervous ahead of her Salzburg performance.
Of course I'm nervous. I want to do my best, and I think I'm concentrating hard. Wherever I may have sung in the past, it's still very nerve-wracking. It's all so famous here. Everyone is watching, so I can't afford to make any mistakes.
The Salzburg Festival is one of the most important classical musical events in Europe. More than 200,000 fans of opera and classical music come here every year from around the world. The biggest names in opera perform to audiences which include many critics and concert house directors. Performances a young artist give here are important in securing engagements for the future. The role of the Nightingale is demanding.
It's a coloratura role, and it really isn't very easy in a musical sense. But I think it's beautiful. Despite the fact that it's a bird, the nightingale sounds warm and human.
What's known as coloratura soprano is the brightest and highest-pitched women's voice in opera. And it's the hardest to perform. Italian tenor Antonio Poli plays the male lead. He's an up-and-coming singer, too. The pair win over the audience in Salzburg. Julia Novikova's debut has been a success.
I think it went pretty well. The audience was happy, I could feel that. But I think I still have room for improvement.
Julia Novikova plans to come to Salzburg next year. The organizers of the festival have already invited her.
The French theatre company Les Plasticiens Volants have been performing spectacular shows with giant inflatable puppets for over 30 years. They're always busy producing new shows, and their latest one has just premiered in the southwest of France.
Enormous marionettes float several meters above the ground. The weightless giants execute a precise choreography and write their story across the sky. The new show by the French street theatre company Les Plasticiens Volants is called Big Bang. It tells the story of the creation of the universe. It recently premiered in the town of Libourne near Bordeaux.
The advantage and the biggest challenge is building a marionette without a solid and fixed structure. They have to move in a way that makes them seem alive. We want the audience, in their imagination, to believe they can bend and turn their heads.
The marionettes are filled with a mix of air and helium. They're guided from the ground. The puppeteers move through the crowd, using ropes to operate the figures overhead. Les Plasticiens Volants have been delighting audiences the world over for more than 25 years. This performance is entirely without words, and the images invite spectators to enter a realm of fantasy and emotion.
You have to practice over and over. Sometimes it's so windy that you know the performance will be affected. But tonight it was brilliant. That's the magic of it. That's what makes a performance on stage indoors different from one outdoors.
For the past 12 years, the company has been based in a former tannery in the town of Groslay near Toulouse. 3 months ago, they inflated the new marionettes for the first time. The technique is simple. Fans regulate the air supply, and ropes control the puppets. The theatre group spent about 3 years developing their new show.
These 4 pieces here have never been blown up with helium as an ensemble. We don't know how well they fly and what the total effect will be. It'll be a surprise.
Next door, a 20-meter-long 2-headed monster gets a coat of paint. The shade of the color has to work in the dark, and the colors need to glow.
We want to give them a personality, bring them alive. We don't try to make them beautiful, but to express their personalities.
The puppet has to make an impression up close and from a distance. The audience can touch them, see every detail. But they also need to have an effect from 50 or 100 meters away.
The first models are small in size. The figures are first designed on the computer and then transposed onto cloth. The separate sections are sewn together. But until the puppet is filled with a mix of helium and air, there's no saying whether it'll work as planned. The ropes have to be attached to the right spot so they can be operated and move through the air. The puppeteers have to learn to merge with the marionettes flying overhead to create an illusion of poetry in motion.
It's like a closet door that creaks, and suddenly you remember the dreams you had as a child. Even adults are taken back to their childhood dreams and play with the inflatable figures.
At the Street Theatre Festival in Libourne, about 3,000 spectators gathered to watch the world premiere of Big Bang.
I liked it a lot. Fun to watch. Fabulous.
The performance takes an hour. It's Les Plasticiens Volants' brief history of how the universe was born.
Lala Berlin is a fashion label that shot to fame in 2004 after its debut appearance at the Berlin Fashion Week. Its founder, Lala Berlin, has always had a love for wool, though her knitwear collection now uses several other luxury textiles, including bamboo. We met up with Lala in Berlin.
When the Lala Berlin fashion label unveiled its latest summer collection, the event looked more like an art happening than a fashion show. Made of neoprene, silk, jersey, and poplin, the outfits were futuristic, imaginative, and very unusual. Designer Lala Berlin founded the label 8 years ago. When it comes to both business and creativity, she's always taken an unconventional approach. But being on trend comes to her fairly naturally.
I think I have my finger on the pulse because I'm very open-minded and receptive. That makes it easy to tap into what's going on. And I'm my own best customer. I do what I do for myself.
Lala never attended fashion school, but today she has 15 people working for her. Her designers are already working on next year's winter collection. For the time being, it's all top secret.
I'm perfectly happy to be given advice by people who know better. They do exist, and I'm very glad they do. I'm not God, though it would be nice to be God.
Her first collection consisted of pieces she'd knitted herself. Over the years, she's experimented with various fabrics and prints to find her signature style.
Prints on chiffon, especially silk chiffon and silk georgette, are pretty typical. I would call that look very typical of Lala Berlin. So are the prints from Egypt and the Middle East, which is where I originally come from.
Colorful, striking patterns, and plenty of knits are all trademarks of the current autumn-winter collection, which was presented at Berlin Fashion Week earlier this summer.
When I was starting out, I found myself on a plane one day reading a magazine. I can't even remember where I was on my way to. And I opened this magazine and saw a picture of Claudia Schiffer out shopping in one of my knits. That was pretty funny.
Lala doesn't just design the clothes for Lala Berlin, she runs the business side of things too. She also has a 3-year-old daughter, so she's got her work cut out for her.
I was clueless when I started out and had my head in the clouds. At some point, I realized how much work it entailed. That's why I've got Fassbinder up there. He's the one who said you can sleep when you're dead. I would say that the key to success is to be lighthearted in your approach and not too hell-bent on your mission.
Lala Berlin gets her inspiration from the streets of Berlin. Her collections are now available in more than 200 selected stores worldwide.
Danish artist Peter Callesen creates 3D paper sculptures from simple sheets of white paper. He uses the frailty of the paper and the 2D space left by the cut to reflect the tragic and romantic themes within his work. We caught up with him in his Copenhagen studio.
Danish artist Peter Callesen is in his studio, creating a delicate sculpture out of an ordinary piece of paper.
It's a flat thing, it's 2D. And then the challenge for me is, I think, to try and create something which is 3D or, a 3D sculpture out of a flat surface. This transformation is still something which really triggers me.
Each work is made using a single sheet of paper, nothing more. The sculptures are created from the cutouts alone. One of Callesen's paper artworks can cost up to 3,000 euros. He participates in solo exhibitions in Europe and Asia on a regular basis.
It's almost as close to nothing as you can get in terms of value. And I think that's interesting for me, an artist, to work with something which is so empty or almost emptied for value.
70 artists use this studio space in the Danish capital, Copenhagen. This is where Callesen makes his paper sculptures. He has a vision of what he wants to create before he begins.
I both think positive and negative. I have to think both at the silhouette and the sculpture at the same time. So but to me, I don't think it's separate ways of thinking. I see it as one piece of work.
After sketching, it's time to cut and shape the paper. He uses a range of special tools: a scalpel for cutting, a dentist's tool for folding, and a blunt wooden tool for shaping. Callesen uses ordinary glue to keep the paper sculpture stable. His creations might take a few hours or days to complete. He likes to draw inspiration from nature. His studio is located near the water. Callesen also studies the flowers in his allotment garden. He's fascinated by delicate things.
I think what's important that you are curious and open towards your surroundings. Then I actually think that at least I could get inspired from everything.
The page of paper he uses measures 210 by 297 millimeters, a standard size developed in Germany in 1922. Today, it's used around the world.
What I find interesting about the A4 paper is that it's an everyday object that we all use every day without hardly noticing it as a material. It's just something which carries information for us.
Callesen doesn't just work with the A4 format. He also produces large-scale installations. These are also completed with just a single sheet of paper that's several meters long. Those paper-thin creations tackle major themes, from creation to impermanence. He enjoys trading ideas with his fellow artists at the studio. They're fascinated by his work.
And he just takes a blank piece of paper and just something magic comes out of it.
A work of art from a blank slate. Callesen recently designed a 12-meter sculpture for the University of Copenhagen. It will be built in 2012, this time using aluminum. For now, Peter Callesen is creating works for his next solo exhibition in Norway. Sometimes he needs A4 paper just to take notes. But more than anything, each sheet of paper, to him, represents a wealth of creative possibilities.
You definitely need a steady hand for that craft, I think. Now, living in the city has its advantages, but one thing it can lack is the ability to be at one with nature. However, city folk have recently discovered that they can have the best of both worlds, as areas of parks and private gardens are now being used to grow local organic produce.
Back to nature. Whether it's for growing flowers or vegetables, city gardens are making a comeback. And there's plenty of inspiration at the newsstands. The market for garden and country magazines is flourishing. The German bi-monthly country life magazine Landlust sold a record 800,000 copies this summer. Trend scout Lala Berlin knows why the magazine is so attractive.
We have always had a latent need to make things ourselves and to get back to basics. We are beginning to realize that we are in a position to win things back that we've lost. This desire to be independent and to provide for ourselves is making itself felt in many areas.
Big city bees. In recent years, more and more urban beekeepers have been putting their hives on the tops of high-rise buildings, even churches. And they're harvesting the honey.
Bees are generally out searching for nectar and pollen within a 3-kilometer range. They don't expect to find flowers right in front of the hive. So here is just as good as the side of a field.
City gardens are also popular. Urbanites can learn all about gardening at this communal garden in Berlin.
It's excellent. It's very, putting your hands in the soil makes you feel alive to start with. So it always makes me feel fantastic working with the land.
The labels green, organic, and fair trade have become more and more common in recent years. People look for clothes made of natural fibers or furniture from recycled wood. The dream of living on the land is also born of the desire to be one with nature. Provincial life is in and will stay that way, says Lala Berlin.
There will be more and more people who will have a small apartment in the city and a place in the country at the same time. Not one or the other, but both together.
Those who can't afford that lifestyle still have the option of looking for green spaces in the cities. An urban garden instead of a house in the countryside is one way for people to satisfy their longing for nature, in an affordable way and with less travel.
And that brings us to the end of our highlight show. But before we go, just a quick reminder that you can find all of those reports on our website. Thanks for joining us today and do hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.